Hello, my dear students. Hope you guys are all doing good. Hope you guys are all perfectly fine. So, now in this session, we are going to understand the provisions of SA 260. So, we are going to discuss the standard on audit, which is SA 260. The title of SA 260 is communication with those charged with governance. So this standard I'm particularly going to teach you from the context of CA inter perspective, and this standard was newly added in new scheme syllabus. So if you have prepared for the syllabus for November 2023 attempt, previously this standard was not there as a part of CA inter syllabus, but now for this May 2024 examination, which is going to be the first examination under new scheme. So for this new syllabus, this SA 260 has been added at the CA inter level, and also this standard is going to be there at your CA final also. This standard is going to be there at your CA final also. So we are going to discuss SA 260, which is applicable for CA inter as well as CA final, both under new scheme. So without any delay further, let us try to understand what is this SA 260 is all about, what is the concept of this standard, what this standard is guiding us, what as an auditor we are, what as an auditor our responsibilities are under this SA 260. You will try to understand it in a detailed manner. So as you could see now, what is the title of the standard here, guys? SA 260. What is the title of the standard? So the title of the standard is communication with those charged with governance. SA 260, the title of the standard is what? Communication with those charged with governance. So before we go into this standard in a deeper manner, I would like to ask a few basic questions which we are already aware of it. So let me ask you a few basic questions. With that, we will proceed with our further discussion. Okay, right. So the questions which I want to ask are as follows. Standards on auditing are applicable for whom? These standards on auditing, are they required to be complied by auditor, or are they required to be complied by the management? So the management has nothing to do with the standards on auditing. The standards on auditing are something which an auditor has to follow while conducting the audit. So if you see the title of SA 260, they are talking about communication with those charged with governance. Communication with those charged with governance. Communication between whom and whom? See, one party to the communication is clear from the title. So one of the party to the communication is those charged with governance. So communication with whom? Communication between whom? So let me rephrase the question like this. So SA 260 is going to talk about communication with those charged with governance. So when I say communication, there should be two parties to the communication. One party to the communication is clear from the title itself. So when I say communication, communication should happen between two people, no? So one party to this communication is those charged with governance. Who is other party to the communication? Is it management or is it auditor? So the other party to the communication is auditor. Why? Because the standards on auditing are dealing with the auditor's responsibility. So this standard is going to talk about a few important communication, a few points which require communication between the auditor and those charged with governance while conducting the audit. So as I have told you earlier also in our earlier discussion of the standards also, I have told you very specifically, it is very important for us to know why the standard has been given. If you don't understand the objective of the standard, no matter how many times you read it, no matter how many times you watch it, there will always be the gap in the information whatever you are having. So this standard is going to talk about a few points which require an effective communication between the auditor and those charged with governance. Able to understand? So this is what this standard is going to deal about. Now before we go deeper and understand what kind of communication is required between auditor and those charged with governance, first let us try to understand who are those charged with governance. Let us first try to understand. So before we understand what kind of communication is required between auditor and those charged with governance, first it becomes necessary for us to become aware of who will fall under this category of those charged with governance, what exactly they do, what is their responsibility. So let us try to understand about those charged with governance. Then we will try to focus on what kind of communication is required between those charged with governance and auditor. So without any delay further, let me try to explain what is the meaning of those charged with governance. Right. So let us try to understand those charged with governance. So I'm writing the shortcut here, those charged with governance. So, or let me try to elaborate it, those charged with governance. So first, let us try to concentrate on this part of the term governance. So what is the general meaning of the term governance? So instead of understanding all the term in a single shot, let us try to break down this broader term and try to understand each and every part in a detailed manner. So first, let us talk about governance. Sir, what do you mean by governance? What about this term governance? So the general meaning of the term. So if you open the dictionary or if you search it in the Google to know the meaning of the term governance, you will be informed that governance means it is these are set of rules, or even you can call it as it is a process of decision making. It is a process of decision making that helps a group that helps or a group or an organization to run smoothly. No need to write everything. So just pay attention whatever I'm trying to say here. So what is the meaning of the term governance? So as I've told, governance means the general meaning of the term governance is rules or decision making process. It is a process of making rules or it is a process of making decisions which will help a group or an organization. This decision making process or rules, this will help an organization to run smoothly. That entire decision making process, that entire rules which we have established in an organization or in a group to run that organization or group smoothly, that process, that entire process, we call it as governance. Let me give you one example. See, I'm an auditor. I'm a chartered accountant. I passed my CA final examination. I have taken my certificate of practice. So I started an organization, M and Co. This is my organization. This is my audit firm. This is my audit firm. I have started an organization, M and Co. I'm an audit firm. This is my organization. This is my business. See, every business person, every owner of the business wants his organization to run smoothly. He don't want any kind of disturbances. He don't want any kind of issues. Every organization wants to run smoothly. So now I want my organization to run smoothly. So I have defined certain rules or I am following some process. So I have appointed five staff in my office. Have appointed 5 staff in my office. I told them certain rules. I told them everybody should be there in office by 9 a.m. and your logout time will be 6 p.m. These are the times which you have to follow. So rule number 1, I told you have to come by 9 a.m. and you can leave the office by 6 p.m. Next, rule number 2, I told everybody should come in formals. Everybody should come in formals. Then I have put one more rule, rule number 3. So you have to properly behave with the clients. There should be formal reception of the clients. There should be formal reception of the clients. And I told no one should give any commitment to the client except me. I am the boss. I'm the owner. Now, if a client comes to the office and says, sir, I want certain work to be done, can my article assistant go and say, yes, okay, sir, we will do the work for you? No. I kept a rule in my office that if a work has to be accepted, that work can be accepted only by me. Me being the owner, I only will accept the work. So that rule also I have put. And in order to run my organization smoothly, I have put various other financial rules also. So I have I'm looking for expansion. I thought I need 10 lakh rupees for my expansion. Now I have to decide this 10 lakhs I have to use my own funds or I have to go for loan. Now after running 1 year of my office, I would have made profits. What to do with this profits? Should I take this profits home or should I invest back in the organization itself to further expansion? So in order to run my organization smoothly, as you could see here, I am following so many rules and I'm following a process of decision making. This entire process I call it as governance. What? Governance. So from a small organization perspective, whatever rules or whatever decision making process you are following to run an organization smoothly, to run a group smoothly, that entire process I call it as governance. So as you could see here, all the rules, whatever I have made, whatever decisions I am making, all that I can collectively call it as governance. Now let us take one bigger example. Take Reliance Industries Limited. See, Reliance Industries Limited is also an organization at a very bigger scale in our country, or Reliance is one of the biggest conglomerate. See, even this organization also wants to run smoothly. The management or the top level, the owners of this company don't want this organization to have issues or to have some disturbances. Everybody wants the organization to run smoothly. Even Reliance Industries Limited also wants to run smoothly. Now in this Reliance Industries Limited also, there will be a decision making process, or there will be certain rules they will be following. Like I have told, there will be certain rules regarding employee timings, there will be certain rules regarding investment decisions, whether which products they have to invest, which product they should not invest. There will be certain rules, what products they have to sell, which products they have to sell, which products they have to stop, which products they have to add, new products to be added, discontinuance of the products, what to do with the profits, should it be invested back or should it be distributed as dividends to the shareholders. Able to understand what I'm trying to say? So how to prepare financial statements, who will prepare this financial statements, who will review this financial statements, who will make decisions, who will do which activity, who should be the head of purchase organization, purchase department, who should be the head of sales department, who should be the head of finance department, who should be the CFO, who should be the CEO. So this entire decision making process, this entire rules which will help the organization to run smoothly, that we call it as governance. That we call it as what? Governance. Nothing but overall running of an organization to make it happen smoothly. So this entire process we call it as governance. Able to understand? So why we are understanding about the term governance? Why? Because our objective is to learn what is or who is those charged with governance. That I want to explain, but instead of explaining it directly, I'm trying to break it down. So first we understood what is the meaning of governance. So tell me guys, what is the meaning of governance? The rules or decision making process that will help the organization or a group to run smoothly. That process we call it as governance. Now what is those charged with governance? Charged means what? I'm charging you with this. What do you mean by charge? So you can say, sir, you are charging me 50 rupees for selling the product. I'm not talking about that charge. There is one more meaning for the term charged. See, I am charging you with the responsibility to take care of office when I am absent. When I am out of station, I am charging you with the responsibility to take care of office. So what do you mean by charged? Those who are assigned or those who are entrusted with some responsibility. Those who are entrusted or those who are assigned with some responsibility. So governance means rules or decision making process which will help an organization to run smoothly. Then what do you mean by those charged with governance? Those charged with governance means those people in the organization who are given the responsibility to take care of governance. Whoever has been given the responsibility of governance. Like for example, if in order to run my organization, I have to follow these many rules and I have to make these many decisions. Whoever is given the responsibility, being the owner, I am charged with the responsibility to take care of all these rules, to make all these rules and to take all these decisions. It is whose responsibility? It is my responsibility. I'm talking about the small audit firm which I have started. See, to run the organization, I have to make all these rules. I have to take various decisions. And who is given that responsibility to make all these rules and decisions? Being a owner of the firm, myself. So I will fall under those charged with governance, those who are given with the responsibility of governance. Those who are given those who are entrusted or those who are assigned the responsibility of governance. If you take Reliance Industries Limited, I told in the Reliance Industries Limited, they have to make various rules, they have to take various decisions. Now, whoever in the Reliance Industries Limited, the group of people, whoever are entrusted with these responsibilities, like making these rules, making these decisions to make an organization run smoothly. So that people in the Reliance Industries Limited who are entrusted with the responsibility of governance, that we call them as those charged with governance. Simply who will fall under this category is board of directors will fall under that category. Why? Because the board of directors will make all these rules, they will involve in the decision making, they will take care of the entire process to run the organization smoothly. Like how to do the investment decisions, where they have to invest, where they should not invest, which product to continue, which product to stop, whether to distribute the dividends or plow back into the company. So all these decisions are made by whom? This entire process we call it as governance. Who are given this responsibility? Board of directors of the company will be given with the responsibility. So this board of directors will fall under those charged with governance. Those board of directors will fall under those charged with governance. Guys, able to understand what I tried to say till here? See, this is to make you understand the concept. There is a separate definition for those charged with governance that we will read and understand. Don't worry about it. But able to understand the general meaning of the term those charged with governance. Hope I have made my point clear. Understood everybody? So now most often the students will have one confusion in mind. Sir, those charged with governance, okay, you gave us some clarity, those who are given the responsibility of governance. But earlier in our previous discussions, we have come across a term called management. Sir, what is the difference between those charged with governance and management? What is the responsibility for those charged with governance and management? So the difference between those charged with responsibility, those charged with governance and management is, as I have told, those charged with governance, they will oversee the strategic direction. They will oversee the strategic direction. Whereas the management or those people who have executional responsibility, who make the things happen, those who are actually executing, that people we call them as management. But whoever is making the decisions, whoever is responsible, whoever is looking or supervising the entire strategic direction of an entity, that people we call them as those charged with governance. So it might sound confusing, but I will give you an example. So assume there is a sole proprietor firm. I am the sole proprietor, Mr. M. I am the sole proprietor. Okay. I started one grocery store. Now, in this grocery store, I have to make various decisions. For example, I have to take various decisions. Like, for example, I have to manage various people. There are various staff. I have to make sure that these staff are all salesmen are there in my grocery store. I have to make sure all these people are coming on time. All these people are working effectively. But I am a sole proprietor. I have various other businesses also. I am not available at the store always. So I am ultimately responsible to make sure that these employees are working effectively. Why? Because if the employees are not working effectively, someday I have to close my store. So I have to make sure that these people have to come on time. For example, I have made a decision. Okay, these people timings are morning 9 a.m. and they have to stay in grocery store till night 8 p.m. This is the rule I have decided. But I am not there present to really verify whether the employees are coming on time, whether going on time, whether they are working effectively or not. I don't know. So what I have done is I have appointed one manager. I have appointed one store supervisor or whatever it is. I have appointed one store manager. Now his responsibility is to make sure that every employee is coming on time and every employee is leaving out as per the scheduled time. So now I am the person who is responsible for overall strategic direction. I set the direction for the entire grocery store, but I am not actually executing. Who is actually executing it? The store manager is actually executing it. Now this person in my organization, in my sole proprietor firm, this person will come under management. Being the owner, I will fall under those charged with governance. Okay. Now for this grocery store, I have to prepare financial statements. For this grocery store, I have to prepare financial statements. I am responsible. I am responsible for preparation of financial statements, but I don't know how to prepare the financial statements. So what I have done is I have appointed a chartered accountant. I have appointed another person, Mr. Chartered Accountant, to prepare the financial statements and file my tax returns. Now I am the owner. I am responsible for overall strategic direction, but I am not doing it by myself. I assigned this responsibility to somebody else, Mr. N. Now this fellow will fall under management. I will fall under those charged with governance. Able to understand? I will give you one more example. Assume there is a partnership firm. Three partners are there. Mr. A, Mr. B, Mr. C. These three people are partners. A, B and C. These three people are partners. Now they have started one construction industry. All of these three put together, they are doing construction activity. Now who is responsible for creating entire strategic direction for their business? That means this company should make profits. We have to make the profits. We have to make this organization grow. That overall responsibility is there with whom? That overall responsibility is there with the partners. Now actually partners are those charged with governance. Why? Because they are given the responsibility for overall strategic direction, like governance. They are the persons responsible for making rules, and also they are the persons responsible for making decisions. which project to take up, which project not to take up, how many where you have to construct, where you should not construct, which real estate property you have to acquire, which property you should not acquire, what should be the price of each flat. So that entire decision making process is whose responsibility? Being the owners of this company, being the owners of this partnership firm, partners have that responsibility. Those charged with governance have that responsibility. But can you expect them to do each and every activity on their own? Can you expect them to take care of each and every activity on their own? Definitely not. See, these people, they are constructing one apartment at one of the real estate property. So now this project, whether they are using a proper quality of cement, whether they are using the cement and sand in proper ratio, cement versus sand in proper ratio, they are using it or not, build quality is proper, they are properly watering that premises or not, that they have to take care. But do you think these people will be available there at the site construction all the time to monitor this activity? No. So now what they have done is they have appointed one manager. They have appointed one manager who will make sure that this build quality is proper kind of ingredients are getting used, and cement, sand, daily watering requirements, everything is happening as expected by these owners, to make sure that one manager was appointed. Now these people are making decisions, but actual execution is taken care by this site in charge or this site in charge or manager, whatever you call him. Now in this example, this person will fall under management, whereas these partners will fall under those charged with governance. Hope you guys are able to understand with these examples. See, those who are actually executing, who are actually taking the steps at the ground level, that we call them as management. Whereas whoever is making the decisions, that people we call them as those charged with governance. Able to understand? Clear and comfortable? Now let me give you one more example. So now you take Reliance Industries Limited. Now, as I have told, in the Reliance Industries Limited, who will fall under those charged with governance? In case of company, always those charged with governance will be board of directors. Why? Because they are the people who make decisions, or the people who decide what needs to happen in the organization. But can you expect each and every board of director to go and work at the ground level to make sure that things will happen? No, they will not do it. So that's why what they will do is they will appoint certain people who will take care of entire departments. Like for example, as a board of directors, they have ultimate responsibility to make sure that company is procuring proper raw materials. Yes or no? They have to procure proper raw materials to make the production. But can you expect the board of directors to go and execute all that? No. So what they have done is they have appointed one purchase head, director of purchase department. They have appointed one person, director of purchase department, Mr. A. This person will take care of all the purchase department. This person will head the entire purchase department. Now this person, Mr. A, who is a director of purchase department, he will fall under management, whereas board of directors are those charged with governance. They just take decisions, but who will execute? So like whatever decisions which are taken by those charged with governance regarding purchases, all that decisions will be taken care by Mr. A, who is a director of purchase department. Now they have appointed another person, Mr. B, director of finance. They have appointed another person, Mr. B, director of finance. Now ultimately board of directors will take a decision. We have to prepare the financial statements as per applicable financial reporting framework. But do you think board of directors will sit and prepare? No. So what they have done is they have appointed Mr. B, a director of finance. He will head the entire finance department to make sure that financial statements are prepared as per applicable financial reporting framework. They are prepared on time. They contain all the information. There are no deviation. They show correct information. So this entire finance department will be headed by Mr. B. Now Mr. B will come under management, whereas entire board of directors will come under those charged with governance. Similarly, someone has to take care of production. They have appointed one head of production department. Now that head of production will fall under management, whereas board of directors will fall under those charged with governance. Able to understand? Clear and comfortable, everybody? So this is what the basic difference between those charged with governance and board of directors. Those who are given, those who make only decisions, those who oversee the strategic direction, those people will be called as those charged with governance. But whoever is executing all that decisions, that we call them as management. But in companies, what will happen is those charged with governance and management, both the roles will be played by the single category of people who are board of directors. In 90% of the cases, what will happen is those charged with governance and management, both the roles will be played by only board of directors. Sir, how it will be possible, sir? So even if you remember in our earlier discussions, whatever we had, we told that who will prepare financial statements? Management, I told. So what do you mean by management? I might have told board of directors. So now you are telling board of directors as management. Now you are also telling board of directors as those charged with governance. Why? Because what will happen is in 90% of the cases, or even you can say 95 to 99% of the cases, in the companies, management, that is board of directors themselves, will play the role of those charged with governance and also board of directors. Sir, how come, sir? So assume that in the company, small company X Limited, there are five board of directors. There are five board of directors. Now these five board of directors, they will make various decisions regarding the company, like where to invest, which product to introduce, which product to close down, what to do with the profit, should it be invested back, should it be distributed. So all these decisions are taken by five board of directors. Now they will fall under those charged with governance. Now what they will do, these five board of directors, only one of the director will act as a CFO, one of the director will act as head of purchase department, one of the director will act as head of sales department, one of the director will act as head of some other department. So if you see here, whoever this board of directors are there, they themselves will share the management responsibility also. This is what usually happens. So in the company, whoever this board of directors are there, they themselves will share among them management responsibility also. So if you see it here, the board of directors are only making decisions, and this board of directors are also actually making that decision to be executed. So this is what mostly will happen in companies. Those charged with governance and the board of directors, both the roles, sorry, those charged with governance and the management, both the roles will be played by single team, whom we call them as board of directors. Whom we call them as what? Board of directors. Guys, able to understand everybody? So this is what the basic difference between those charged with governance and the management. So we have spent a lot of time in just understanding what is the meaning of those charged with governance, but this is very important, because unless and until we don't know the difference between those charged with governance and the management, the discussion always will look empty. So since we have understood the those charged with governance meaning, so now we will try to understand what this standard is all about. So now before we go into the standard, let me ask you a few questions. Do you think if you are conducting audit of X Limited, you are an auditor, Mr. M, you are a practicing chartered accountant, you are appointed as auditor of this company. Do you think should there be a communication between auditor and those charged with governance, or they should not talk with each other? What do you think? Ignore the standard. Keep aside what has been told in the standard. Just I'm asking you one direct question. So if there is an auditor, if there is an auditor appointed for some company or for some entity, do you think there should be some effective communication happening between auditor and those charged with governance? Yes. Between auditor and those charged with governance, there should be an effective communication. If there is no effective communication between auditor and those charged with governance, that audit might not be fruitful. Your audit might not be effective. So take for example, as an auditor, you are appointed as auditor of company X Limited. Now, when we are understanding the overall audit procedures, first I told you have to perform risk assessment procedure. Being an auditor, you want to understand the entity, environment and its internal control. What the entity is doing, what is the environment of the entity, what kind of internal controls they have, you want to understand. And one of the most important activity as an auditor which you have to do to know about entity, environment and its internal control is you have to do inquiry. With whom you will do the inquiry? Those charged with governance only. You have to go to that board of directors, sit with them and ask them, sir, what is your entity, in what environment you are operating, what internal controls you have. If you don't have that effective communication between the auditor and those charged with governance, you will not be able to prepare risk assessment procedures itself. You will not be able to perform risk assessment procedures itself. Leave out rest of the audit. If there is no effective communication, you can't do the audit. You can't even start the audit by performing risk assessment procedures. Able to understand? And ultimately, so if you have to do your audit effectively, for auditor, it is very much beneficial for you to have effective communication with those charged with governance. So because of this communication, not just auditor will be benefited, even those charged with governance also will be benefited. How, sir? For example, auditor has completed doing the audit. Now he had some findings. Now, if he goes and communicates that findings with those charged with governance, sir, in your organization, these areas, something is wrong. In these areas, fraud is happening. In these areas, employees are looting you. So if the auditor goes and discusses that findings with those charged with governance, they can know the problems happening in their organization. They can take the remedial actions and they can overall improve their organization or not. So if there is a effective communication between auditor and those charged with governance, definitely it is going to be beneficial for both the parties. It is going to be beneficial for both the parties. So that's what this standard is all about. This standard is trying to promote an effective communication between auditor and those charged with governance, so that overall audit process will be effective, and also it will help the those charged with governance to make sure their organization goes in the correct direction. So now what the standard will try to explain is what matters are required to be communicated. As an auditor, what things you have to communicate with the those charged with governance. So as I've told, standards on auditing talks about auditor's responsibility. Standards on auditing is not talking about those charged with governance responsibilities. Why? Because standards have no responsibility, standards have no control on those charged with governance. So the standard on audit will have power over auditors. So this SA 260, it is going to tell us matters which you are required to communicate with those charged with governance. As an auditor, if you move one step ahead, those charged with governance also will come one step forward, so that there will be effective communication between auditor and those charged with governance, and overall audit will be going in a progressive direction. So that is what all this standard about. This standard will tell us which matters you are required to communicate as an auditor, what and all issues you have to communicate. So what is the form of communication, in what manner you have to communicate, should you communicate in a oral manner, should you communicate in a written manner, what things you have to document regarding that communication. That is what all this standard is about. Understood, everybody? So that's all, guys. So the only time we have spent here in this standard, almost half an hour, whatever we have spent to lay the foundation for this entire 260. Once you are clear with this foundation, the rest of all the standard we can complete just in a 20 to 30 minutes. We will read and finish off the standard. Able to understand, everybody? So without any delay further, let us try to understand SA 260 now. So if we start going through the standard, so first we will try to learn who are those charged with governance. So as I've told, the same thing will be told in a structured format. Let us see what is that. So who are those charged with governance? The persons or organizations, example, a corporate trustee with the responsibility of for overseeing the strategic direction of the entity and obligations relating to accountability of the entity. So this includes overseeing even financial reporting process. Sir, what exactly they are trying to say here? So let us try to break down this definition. So who are those charged with governance? The persons or organization, like corporate trustee in the sense like board of directors, etc. So those people with the responsibility of overseeing the strategic direction. Sir, what do you mean by overseeing? Supervising. So those who are supervising the strategic direction, that means how the company should go forward, what the company should do to become successful. So those who supervise this strategic direction for the entity, as well as obligations relating to accountability. Accountability means being responsible to others. So those who handle the obligations relating to accountability. So those people, we call them as those charged with governance. See, I will tell you, I want to talk about this accountability with the help of this example. Assume that I'm a owner of a pharmacy. I'm owner of pharmacy. I'm running a pharmacy. So I have done some Pharma D or B pharmacy I have done. So I have opened a, as a sole proprietorship, sole proprietorship organization, I opened a small pharmacy. Now, one day I have appointed, so I'm not there regularly available at the store. So even I am the owner of that pharmacy, I'm not there at the business throughout the day because I have various other obligations also. So what I have done is I have appointed one manager. Now he is required to handle the store. That means when the customers comes, he has to give them medicines. He has to listen to their problems and gives them medicine. One day, this manager, a customer came to him and asked him, "Sir, I am suffering from fever." Or he's suffering from some issues. So he came to that pharmacy store. As a owner, I'm not there at the shop. Now this manager is there. This customer went to this manager and told, "Sir, from morning I'm suffering from fever. Please give me some medicine." Now this fellow has given the medicine. He did not listen to the customer's problem carefully. He was on a phone talking to his girlfriend. So what he has done is, instead of giving him the tablets to reduce the fever, he has given some other tablets. Because of that tablets, this person's situation has worsened. That means he is handling a life and death scenario. Now, if this is the case, who will be ultimately held responsible? Whatever damage this person has suffered, who will be held ultimately responsible? Will the police department or this medical department, will they come and arrest this manager, or will they come and arrest the owner of the entity? Owner of the entity they are going to arrest. Why? Because he is ultimately accountable. If something goes wrong, whose face will be shown to the public? Owner's face, not the manager's face. So even you can say those who are handling the obligations relating to accountability, that means those who are ultimately held responsible. If something goes wrong, those people also will fall under those charged with governance. Those people also will fall under those charged with governance. Able to understand? So those people in the organization who are responsible for overseeing the strategic direction, for supervising the strategic direction of the entity, and who are required to handle the obligations relating to accountability. That means if something goes wrong, these people will be shown the face. These people will be ultimately held responsible. Those people, we call them as those charged with governance. Able to understand? So always remember, if something goes wrong in the organization, who will be ultimately held responsible, whose face will be shown to the public? So this those charged with governance only. So if they ask you the definition, and one more thing they say here, this includes even overseeing financial reporting process. That means they also supervise the preparation of the financial statements. They might not actually go and sit and prepare the financial statements, but they're responsible for overseeing, supervising that financial reporting process. Like take for example, sorry. So there is a Reliance Industries Limited. Okay. Now the board of directors of the company, they are ultimately responsible for preparing financial statements. But as I have told you multiple times, board of directors will not actually sit and prepare financial statements. They have appointed one chartered accountant and they asked them to prepare the financial statements. Okay. Ultimate responsibility is with board of directors. Now the chartered accountant, whoever they have appointed, he's a very lazy fellow. He did not prepare the financial statements on time. He did not prepare the financial statements on time. So now the shareholders did not get the copies of audited financial statements on time. Will these shareholders come and question this chartered accountant, or will they directly go and question the board of directors? They will ultimately go and directly question board of directors. Why? Because board of directors, being those charged with governance, they are required to deal with the obligations relating to accountability. That means if something goes wrong, whose face will be shown? Board of directors face will be shown. Able to understand, everybody? So that's why if they ask you the definition, who are those charged with governance, you have to write this definition. Very simple, guys. Don't try to mug it up. Understand the concept. Those people or organizations who are overseeing the strategic direction of the entity, and they deal with the obligations relating to accountability. They even foresee the financial reporting process. So do you require an effort to memorize it? No. If you have conceptual clarity, you can write it in a very simple way. So who are those charged with governance? Two words you have to present there. Those who oversee the strategic direction and those who deal with the obligations relating to accountability. If you write these two sentences, you will get full marks regarding the definition of those charged with governance. So hope you guys are able to understand. So if you see here, some example also they are giving. For example, in most entities, governance is the collective responsibility of governing body. So in most of the cases, the governance is responsibility of a collective body like board of directors, such as board of directors, a supervisory board, partners, proprietors, a committee of management, trustees, or equivalent persons. In some smaller entities, however, one person may be charged with governance. For example, owner manager. In case of sole proprietor, there will not be a group of people who come under those charged with governance. There is only one person. Owner himself will fall under those charged with governance. So in big organizations, a group, collectively a group like board of directors, they play the role of those charged with governance. In small organizations, there could be even one single person who will fall under the definition of those charged with governance. Clear? So will you write the definition of those charged with governance if they ask you in the examination? You have to write it, that too in simple terms. Only two terms you have to use. Those people are organization who are responsible for overseeing the strategic direction of the entity and obligations relating to accountability. Those people will fall under those charged with governance. Now, sir, objectives of the auditor. As per this standard, what are the objectives? As we all know, objectives means the responsibilities which are put on the auditor by the standard. So this standard is putting some responsibilities on the auditor. In order to do the audit in an effective manner, this standard is asking the auditor some duties to fulfill. So what are that objectives of the auditor as per SA 260? What duties auditor has to fulfill as per SA 260? Let us try to read and understand. So the objectives of the auditor are, you can also say the responsibilities of the auditor as per this standard are to communicate clearly with those charged with those charged with governance, the responsibilities of the auditor in relation to the financial statements audit, and an overview of planned scope and timing of the auditor. So first responsibility which an auditor has to fulfill as per SA 260 is, as an auditor, you have to go and communicate with the auditor what are your overall responsibilities. You have to make those charged with governance clear. Sir, as an auditor, my responsibility is only to express opinion. I am not giving any guarantee. Don't consider my opinion as a guarantee. Even though I am doing audit, management responsibility is not reduced. That means management will prepare financial statements. I will verify them, sir. Why? Because in some cases, those chartered with governance will not be aware of what auditor is supposed to do, what are auditor's responsibilities. They don't become aware. So as an auditor, SA 260, on a careful side, they are asking you as an auditor, go to those charged with governance and communicate with them what your responsibilities are. You tell them, sir, I am an auditor. You are appointing me as an auditor. My responsibility is what? I will do the audit, give the opinion. That's all. I am not giving any guarantee. Management have to fulfill their responsibilities. I don't reduce management responsibilities. That is, management will prepare financial statements. I will do the audit. Don't expect me to prepare the financial statements. So like this, well in advance, as an auditor, you should go and communicate with those charged with governance what are your responsibilities, and also try to communicate with them planned scope and timing of the audit. Overall scope and timing of the audit. Sir, this is what I'm going to cover. My objective is to obtain reasonable assurance. And overall timing of the audit. I'm planning to complete your audit within 15 days, 20 days. I will complete your audit. So like this, the first objective, the first responsibility of the auditor as per SA 260 is, you have to go to those charged with governance, communicate with them what your overall responsibilities are, and also discuss with them planned scope and timing of the audit. Next one, to obtain from those charged with governance information relevant to the audit. Not just you communicating with those charged with governance. If at all you require some information from those charged with governance for effective conduct of the audit, it is your responsibility to get all that relevant information from those charged with governance. Like for example, you want to perform risk assessment procedures. You want to know about entity, environment and its internal control. To know about entity, environment and its internal control, you need some information from those charged with governance. Don't hesitate. Go to those charged with governance, get whatever relevant information you want, which you feel is relevant for the audit. So that is the second objective. So two objectives. What are they? Number one, you have to communicate with them overall responsibilities and planned scope and timing of the audit. Number two, get all the information relevant for your audit from those charged with governance. Next, third objective, to provide those charged with governance with timely observations arising from the audit that are significant and relevant to their responsibility to oversee the financial reporting process. If I put it in simple terms, whatever your observations are there, if you have any findings from the audit in the financial statements, if you find any observations, if you have any issues you found some fraud, you found some error, you have to go and communicate those observations also to those charged with governance on a timely manner, so that they can come to know whether they are properly fulfilling their responsibility. See, as I've told, if something goes wrong in the entity, those charged with governance will be shown fingers. So that's why, as an auditor, if you find any significant observations from the audit, you have to go and communicate with those charged with governance on a timely basis, so that they can also become aware whether there is something going wrong in their organization. That is the third objective. So at the beginning of the audit, you go and communicate with them responsibilities, overall plan and scope, overall planned scope and timing. Number two, if you want any information relevant to the audit, try to obtain it. Number three, once you have completed the audit, if you have any observations, go and even communicate that observations also with those charged with governance on a timely basis. And you have to promote effective two-way communication between auditor and those charged with governance. That means there should be proper communication. Don't go and argue with them. Don't go and fight with them. So you should not be very commanding. So you should not go and say, hey, I am an auditor, I want all information, you have to give. That's all. So don't be so aggressive. So there should be mutual cooperation. So as an auditor, you take one step for effective cooperation. See, if those charged with governance are anyhow, they are not having such an attitude, but we should not go into that attitude. No. So first, positively, we have to make a step. So if still those charged with governance are not listening, that is not your headache. But as an auditor, first you should take a step to promote effective communication between the auditor and those charged with governance. Understood? So very important from the examination perspective. So if they ask you what are the objectives of the auditor as per SA 260, so as an auditor, there are 4 objectives as per SA 260. What are they? Come on guys, repeat. So if I make a summary, the 4 responsibilities or 4 objectives of the auditor as per SA 260, what are they? Number 1, what is number 1? Communicate with those charged with governance responsibilities of the auditor and also planned scope and timing of the audit. At the beginning of the audit, generally we do it. Number two, obtain relevant information for the audit. Whatever information that is relevant for your audit, that you have to obtain it. Number three, whatever your observations are there, that observations are required to be communicated with those charged with governance on a timely basis. Number four, you should make an effort to promote effective two-way communication. So there should be effective two-way communication between auditor and those charged with governance. You try to promote it. Clear? So this is what the objectives. So we are done with two things. We have understood who are those charged with governance. We have also understood what are the objectives of the auditor. Next, so as an auditor, you have to determine appropriate persons with whom to communicate. So in case of sole proprietors, in case of partnership firms, we can easily identify who are those charged with governance. But in case of companies, it becomes a little bit difficult to identify who are those charged with governance. Why? Because as I've told, in most of the organizations, board of directors themselves will play the role of those charged with governance also, and management also. So as an auditor, first you try to put an effort and identify who will fall under that those charged with governance definition. That also you have to do it. So that is the third point they are trying to say here, determining appropriate persons with whom to communicate. The auditor shall determine the appropriate persons within the entity's governance structure with whom to communicate. So as an auditor, first you should identify in the organization who will fall under that definition of those charged with governance. Next one, sir, what matters are required to be communicated? This we have already seen. So like as I have told, just as in the objectives we have seen, we are required to communicate what are auditors' responsibilities. We are also required to communicate planned scope and timing of the audit. Whatever your findings are there, that also you are required to communicate. This only they try to elaborate it. Nothing but in the objectives they have told a overview. They have told you have to communicate with responsibilities. You have to communicate your responsibilities. Sir, what responsibilities I have to communicate? That they are trying to tell it here in a detailed manner. And they told you have to communicate with those charged with governance, planned scope and timing. Sir, what I have to communicate regarding planned scope and timing? That they have tried to elaborate here in the second point. Next, if you see in the third objective, they told you are required to communicate with those charged with governance your findings, whatever your significant findings are there, that you have to communicate. Sir, which significant findings I have to communicate? So nothing but whatever they have told in the objectives, they are trying to elaborate here. So let us try to understand that in a detailed manner. So following matters are required to be communicated by auditor with those charged with governance. What are they? Number one, auditor's responsibilities in relation to financial statements. As an auditor, first you have to go and tell what your responsibilities are. What you will communicate, guys? What is your responsibility? You will say, sir, my responsibility is to express an opinion on the financial statements. I will not give any guarantee. And one more thing you have to remind them, sir, just because I am an auditor, don't assume me to fulfill management responsibilities also. Even though I am appointed as an auditor, management will still have to fulfill their responsibilities. Like, can those charged with governance expect, if I am an auditor, can they expect me to prepare financial statements also? No. Communicate with those charged with governance. Sir, you are appointing me as an auditor. I will do only my responsibility. I will not do management's duty. Don't expect me to prepare financial statements. That is management responsibility. Just because you have appointed as an auditor, that doesn't mean management responsibility will get reduced. Management responsibility will still be there. This is what simply you have to communicate. The same thing they will say there. So the auditor shall communicate with those charged with governance the responsibilities of the auditor in relation to financial statements, including that the auditor is responsible for forming and expressing an opinion on the financial statements, which have already been prepared by management with the oversight of those charged with governance. That means first management, under the supervision of those charged with governance, they will prepare the financial statements. On that, as an auditor, I will express my opinion. So tell them clearly. Also, the audit of the financial statements does not relieve the management or those charged with governance of their responsibilities. Also tell them, sir, just because you have appointed me as an auditor, that will not reduce your responsibilities, that will also not reduce management responsibilities. Even after you have appointed me as an auditor, still as those charged with governance, you have to fulfill your responsibilities. Management will fulfill their responsibilities. There will not be any reduction in the responsibilities of management or those charged with governance just because you have appointed as an auditor. So tell this clearly to those charged with governance. So two things, guys, regarding auditor's responsibilities. Number one, the auditor is responsible for forming and expressing an opinion. Number two, just because auditor is appointed, it will not relieve the management or those charged with governance of their responsibilities. Second one, planned scope and timing of audit. So as we have seen in the objective, as an auditor, you are required to communicate even planned scope and timing, overall scope and timing of the audit. See, here you have to remember one more thing. Just because I told you have to go and discuss about your plan of audit, don't go and discuss detailed plan to those charged with governance. Very important. This point I have told you in audit strategy planning and program also. So when you are going to discuss about scope and timing of the audit, let them know overall scope and timing. Don't go and tell them in a detailed manner, sir, these are the steps. Don't go and disclose a complete audit plan to the those charged with garners. Sir, these steps I will follow. This area this person will do. In this area we will verify this. Don't explain the detailed audit plan. Just tell them overall plan and scope. Don't explain them in a detailed manner what you are going to do. Why? Because whatever you do will become predictable and your effectiveness of the audit will be lost. So that's what they say here. The auditor shall communicate with those charged with governance an overview, not a detailed plan, just an overview of planned scope and timing of the audit, which includes communicating about significant risk. Even you have to communicate with them what are the significant risk which you have identified. If you find any bigger risk, that you have to communicate. An overall planned scope and timing, not the detailed plan, guys, just a overview you have to give them. Next one. So you are even required to communicate significant findings from the audit. Sir, what significant findings? Let us see. The auditor shall communicate with those charged with governance the auditor's views about significant qualitative aspects. Sir, what are qualitative aspects? This I have explained in SA 700. Qualitative aspects means other than numbers. Like you have to communicate about, you have to tell your views, you have to communicate with those charged with governance regarding your views about accounting practices. What accounting policies your client has followed, what accounting estimates your client has followed, what is your opinion about it, what is your view about accounting policies followed by the client, what is your view about accounting estimates made by the client. So if you have any views regarding qualitative aspects, sir, what do you mean by qualitative aspects other than numbers, like accounting practices, accounting estimates? If you have any views, if you have any comments about the accounting practices and accounting estimates, that you can communicate with those charged with governance. So that is the first thing they say here. The auditor's views about significant qualitative aspects of the entity's accounting practices, including accounting policies, accounting estimates, and the financial statement disclosures. So first thing you have to remember here, qualitative aspects. If you have any qualitative aspects, that will fall under other significant findings. Next one, second one. When applicable, the auditor shall explain to those charged with governance why the auditor considers a significant accounting practice that is acceptable under applicable financial reporting framework not to be the most appropriate to the practical circumstances. So what is this? So they are telling, in case if you find certain accounting practice which is accepted by applicable financial reporting framework, but you feel that that is not most appropriate, that also you have to communicate with those charged with governance. I will tell you an example for this. So assume that there is a company X Limited. It is governed by Companies Act 2013. As per Companies Act 2013, the company is required to follow either SLM method of depreciation or WDV method of depreciation. So as per applicable financial reporting framework, either the client has to follow SLM or WDV. Now this client has purchased one machinery. This machinery was designed in such a way that it will exactly produce 10,000 units. After that production of 10,000 units, the machinery will stop working. So now you tell me, keeping in mind the machinery's working nature, neither SLM nor WDV method, but production units method will be more suitable. Yes or no? Applicable financial reporting framework is telling the client to follow either SLM or WDV. But keeping in mind the consumption pattern of the machinery, production units method will be more suitable, will reflect the better consumption pattern of the machinery. So like this, if you have any thoughts like this, where a accounting practice which is suggested by applicable financial reporting framework, if it need not be more appropriate in the practical circumstances, that also you can communicate with those charged with governance. You can go and tell them, sir, you can follow this production units method. Why? Because even though Companies Act is telling SLM or WDV, that might not be appropriate. Why it might not be appropriate? Tell them reasons. Why? Because your machinery is like this. So for this, production units method will be most appropriate. So like this, if you find any, when applicable, the auditor shall explain to those charged with governance why the auditor considers a significant accounting practice that is acceptable under the applicable financial reporting framework need not be most appropriate to the practical circumstances. Similarly, if you find any significant difficulties, if any, encountered during the audit, while conducting audit, if you face any difficulty, like in certain area management did not cooperate, even those things also you can communicate with those charged with governance. Next, unless all of those charged with governance are involved in managing the entity, significant matters arising during the audit that were discussed or subject to correspondence with management. See, this point I will come to that later. So first, what they are trying to tell here is whatever significant matters that have arisen during the course of audit, or which you have discussed with the management, that you discuss it once again with those charged with governance. For example, you are conducting audit of X Limited. While doing audit, you got some issue you got certain significant matter that you discussed with the management already while conducting audit. Now this matter once again discuss with those charged with governance. This matter once again you discuss with those charged with governance. But if all the those charged with governance are involved in management, nothing but what I'm trying to say is, if in organization, if board of directors are only playing the role of management and those charged with governance, if you have already discussed that matter with management, even if you go and communicate with those charged with governance, they're also same people. No, able to understand what I'm trying to say? So assume that I will give better example. So X limited company is there. So there is certain company, those charged with governance are board of directors. They have management. Here, board of directors and management both are different. They have appointed some other team. Apart from board of directors, they have appointed some other team as management. Now, while conducting audit, you came across certain significant matters that you already discussed with the management. Now, what they're telling is, whatever matters that you have discussed with the management, communicate that once again with those charged with governance also. So, these matters, these significant matters I have discussed with your management. Communicate with those charged with governance also. Now, take another company, Y Limited. In another company, Y Limited, management, those charged with governance, both the roles are played by single team, board of directors. Now, as an auditor, you have already discussed certain matter with the management who are board of directors. Now, do you need to once again communicate with those charged with governance? Not required. Why? Because in this organization, management and those charged with governance both are same people. So, if you have already communicated to them as in the position of management, if the those charged with governance are also same parties, no need to communicate once again as a those charged with governance. Able to understand? So, with this understanding, if you read it, unless all of those charged with governance are involved in managing the entity. That means if all the people who are involved in the those charged with governance are managing the entity, which means if management and board of direct if management and those charged with governance both are same, then no need to communicate significant matters once again with those charged with governance. Unless, so that's why if you observe the terminology, unless all of those charged with governance are involved in managing the entity. That means if the management and those charged with governance are not the same people, then whatever significant matters that you have discussed with the management, communicate that once again with those charged with governance. When all the those charged with governance are not involved in management, which means if the management and those charged with governance both are different people, then whatever matters that you have discussed with the management, communicate them once again with those charged with governance. And also written representation the auditor is requesting. See here also same logic. If management and those charged with governance both are different persons, from management he will get written representation. The same thing you will try to communicate with those charged with governance also. Sir, from your management I have got so and so written representation. In case if the management and those charged with governance both are same, so anyhow you are getting the representations from management, are you required to communicate once again with those charged with governance? Not required. Why? Because both are same people. Able to understand? So this sentence framing is a bit difficult, but if you understand this examples, whatever I have told, that will make very much clear sense. So what they're trying to say, unless all of those charged with governance are involved in management, which means if all those charged with governance are involved in the management, then these two are not required. If those charged with governance and management both are same, then below two are not required. If you pay attention to the terminology, they are telling unless all of those charged with governance are involved in managing the entity, which means those charged with governance and management are not same person. Then what you should do, whatever matters that you have discussed with the management, communicate that with those charged with governance. Whatever written representations that you have obtained, that also you communicate with those charged with governance. But however, if both are same party, no need to communicate this once again. Why? Because both are same. Management, those charged with governance, both the roles are played by same team. Understood? Clear? Next one. And few more things which you have to communicate, circumstances that affect the form and content of the auditor's report. Even you have to communicate with those charged with governance, the circumstances which are affecting the form and content of your opinion. That means because of some matter, you are required to modify your opinion. Even communicate that also with those charged with governance. Any other significant matters arising during the audit that in the auditor's professional judgment are relevant. Not just the above. If you find any other matter that in your professional judgment you find it important to communicate with those charged with governance, happily you can go and communicate. Understood? So they may ask a part of the things here. So how they can pose a question is, what are the matters to be communicated? So they might ask you each part of the question. So they might ask you, what are the matters which are required to be communicated regarding auditor's responsibility? Then write only this paragraph. They might not ask you this. Why? Because this is only 2-3 lines. They might ask a combined question. What are the matters you are required to communicate regarding auditor's responsibilities and planned scope and timing of the audit? Sometimes they ask you, give a few examples of significant findings which auditor shall communicate with those charged with governance. Give a few examples of significant findings which auditor is required to communicate with those charged with governance. Then you are supposed to write these things. So what you will write if they ask you what are the reporting responsibilities regarding significant findings to the those charged with governance as per SA 260? What you will write? Number one, your views about qualitative aspects. Next, if you have any accounting practice which is acceptable as per applicable financial reporting framework, but it is not practically suitable, that also you can communicate. Number three, if you find any significant difficulties while conducting the audit, that you can communicate. Number four, unless all of those charged with governance are involved in the management, the significant matters that you have discussed with the management and written representations that you are requesting, that you can communicate once again with those charged with governance, when those charged with governance and management both are different people. Next one, if you have any circumstances that affect form and content of the auditor's report, that also you can communicate with those charged with governance. And not just the above 5 matters, if you find any other significant matters during the audit, that also you can communicate with those charged with governance. Very, very important. For one last time I will repeat. So important because it is newly added in this standard is newly added in the new scheme. High chances of asking a question from here. So that's why I'm stressing this much. Please pay attention. Please consider my effort. Why I'm repeating these many number of times. Very, very important. So significant findings which auditor is required to communicate with those charged with governance. Give a few examples. What you will write? Number one, auditor's views about qualitative aspects. Number two, those accounting practices which are accepted as per applicable financial reporting framework but are practically not suitable. Number three, significant difficulties which are faced by the auditor. Number four, unless all of those charged with governance are involved in the management, whatever significant matters that you have discussed with the management and regarding what matters you are requesting written representations from. Next point, if you have any matters which affect the form and content of the auditor's report, that also you communicate. Not just the above 5, any other matter which auditor in his professional judgment feels as significant, that is also required to be communicated with those charged with governance. Clear? So now coming to the next paragraph, this is also very important, point, communication of auditor's independence in case of listed entities. See, in case of unlisted entities, if you communicate these above matters, this alone will be enough. In case of unlisted entities, if you communicate whatever matters which are mentioned in point number D, that will be enough. But in case if you are conducting audit of any listed entity, in addition to the matters which are required to be communicated here, even you need to communicate about auditor's independence also. Even you need to communicate about auditor's independence also, only in case of listed entities. So very simple, guys. I will tell you one simple logic. If the client for which you are doing audit, if it is an unlisted entity, only communicate matters mentioned in point D. In case if you are conducting audit of a listed entity, then you are required to communicate the points which are there in point number D as well as point number E. Okay, so let us see what we are required to communicate in case of listed entity. Mainly about independence we have to communicate. What are they? So in the case of listed entities, the auditor shall communicate with those charged with governance. Number one, a statement that engagement team and others in the firm as appropriate, the firm and where applicable, network firms, everyone have complied with relevant ethical requirements regarding independence. So you have to communicate with those charged with governance in case of listed entity. Sir, our engagement team, our firm, even our networking firm, like our associate firm, we are in network with another firm. Like in rotation concept, I might have told you what is the meaning of the networking firms. For example, if two firms are having the same partner, we can say networking firms. Or if two firms are operating under same brand name or trade name, we can call them as networking firms. So you have to go and communicate with those charged with governance of a listed entity. Sir, our engagement team, our firm, our networking firms, we all comply with the ethical requirements and independence. So ethical requirements means like we are all complying with integrity, objectivity, professional skepticism, professional competence and due care. So we comply with all these ethical requirements and we are all complying with independence. So that written statement you have to give. To whom? to those charged with governance, that you are all complying with independence. There is no compromise on independence. Guys, why this much stress on independence in case of listed entities? Why? Because in case of listed entities, common person like you and me will be involved. In the case of listed entities, if there is any threat on independence, not just one person will be affected, entire ordinary common public who have invested in that company will get affected. So that's why you have to give a written statement in case of listed entity regarding compliance with ethical requirements and independence. Next, you should also communicate all relationships and other matters between the firm, network firm, and the entity. That means even you have to communicate with those charged with governance, what kind of relationship is there between the client and the firm or networking firm. Either you directly with the client or through your network firm, whatever relationships you are having with the client, that you have to communicate. So the relationships and other matters between the firm, network firm, and the entity, that in the auditor's professional judgment may reasonably be thought to bear on independence. Like for example, if I am a firm conducting audit of the client X Limited, my networking firm is providing accounting services to them, or my networking firm is acting as a underwriting commission underwriter. So like this, if you find as an auditor, if you find because of some relationship between your firm and client, or between your network firm and client, which could have a threat on independence, that should also be communicated with those charged with governance. Sir, we are doing this audit assignment for you. In addition to that, we are also doing some other kind of assignment also for one of your subsidiary company or for directly yourself. So if you have any such kind of relationship which you feel that will have a impact on independence, even that relationships also should be communicated with those charged with governance. And along with that, this should also include total fees charged during the period covered by the financial statements for audit. You should communicate with those charged with governance for doing audit how much total fees you are charging. Non-audit services provided by the firm and network firms to the entity and components controlled by the entity. So in addition to that, you should also communicate with those charged with governance. Are you providing any non-audit services? Non-audit services means taxation, management consultancy, bookkeeping. So either you are providing any of that non-audit services, or your network firm is providing that non-audit services. And also either you are providing these non-audit services directly to the entity or to the components like subsidiary, associate, joint venture, etc. Next one. These fees shall be allocated to categories that are appropriate to assist those charged with governance in assessing the effect on services on the independence of the auditor. That means you have to break up something like this. So for example, I am conducting audit of ABC and Co. This firm is conducting audit of X Limited. For this, audit fees is 10 lakh rupees. Okay. So there is some networking firm, KBC and Co. There is a networking firm. Both are networking firm. They are providing some accounting services to this firm X Limited. For that, the fees is 12 lakh rupees. So now if you see here, the fees for non-audit services is greater than audit services. Now this will encourage this firm to concentrate more on accounting services and have an effect of independence in case of audit services or not. Why? Because the revenue they are deriving from non-audit services is more than the revenue they are deriving from audit services. So that means they will be more favored towards account services, and they might compromise on independence in case of audit services. So if you have these kind of doubts, if you have these kind of relationships as an auditor, you have to communicate all that with those charged with governance. What you have to communicate? So what is the total audit fees you are charging for this assignment? Next, for non-audit, what non-audit services you are providing, either by directly yourself or your networking firm to the entity or its component. And you have to give breakup of the fees for non-audit services. For all non-audit services, you have to give the breakup, how much fees you are charging, so that those charged with governance will analyze how much total fees they are paying for non-audit services, how much fees they are paying for audit services. Is there any impact on independence? But generally what will happen is, in case of Companies Act 2013 has already put so many restrictions for by disqualifying the auditor. So these circumstances will not persist in the case of companies. Why? Because there are already so many restrictions under Companies Act 2013 which will stop appointment of auditor in these cases. Like we have prohibited services under Companies Act. So anyhow you can't do the audit itself. So but if you have any such cases other than companies, you have to communicate. Understood? Next one. The related safeguards that have been applied to eliminate identified threats. So if at all, if you find any threats, what safeguards, what precautions you have taken to overcome that threats, that also should be communicated with those charged with governance. Guys, when these points are required to be communicated, only in the case of listed entities. In case of unlisted entities, if you just communicate your responsibilities, planned scope and timing and significant findings, that will be enough. In case if you are conducting audit of listed entity, you are required to even communicate about these independence related matters also. What you have to communicate regarding independence? First, you have to give a statement that your engagement team, your firm and all your networking firms comply with ethical requirements and independence. Number two, if you are having any relationships between the entity, networking firms and your client, you have to disclose certain information to those charged with governance. What are they? What is the total audit fees you are charging? Non-audit services, if any, provided by you or your networking firm to the client or client's components. And also you have to give the breakup of fees for all these kind of different assignments, which will help the those charged with governance to determine whether there is any impact on independence. And finally, if you find any threat, what safeguards you have taken to overcome that threat, that also should be communicated with those charged with governance. So these are the matters which are required to be communicated in case of listed entities. Sir, what should be the communication process? How you have to communicate? Very simple, guys. If it is a listed entity, compulsorily you have to communicate in writing. No other option. In the case of listed entity, compulsorily you have to communicate things in a written format. In case of unlisted entity, you can do oral communication. But in case if you find oral is not sufficient, then you can go for written. But in almost, as we all know, oral communication will not have any validity. In all the cases, auditors will try to focus on written communications only. But if you go by the standard, in case of listed entities, compulsorily written communication. In case of unlisted entities, the standard has given a choice. If you want to do oral communication, do it. But if you find oral communication will not be proper, then you do written communication there. But practically what will happen? In all assignments, auditor will do written communications only. That's what they say here. First, this point I will read. The auditor shall communicate in writing with those charged with governance regarding auditor's independence when required in case of listed entities. In case of listed entities, compulsorily written communication. Next one. However, in case of other entities, the auditor shall communicate in writing with those charged with governance regarding significant findings from the audit. If in the auditor's professional judgment, oral communication would not be adequate. This is in case of unlisted entities. That means if you want, you can do oral communication. But if you find oral communication will be inadequate, then you have to do written communication. But as we all know, oral communication will not be effective. Always we need written communication only. But mandatory thing has been made under written communication has been made mandatory in case of listed entities. In case of unlisted entities, they have been given a choice of oral communication. But if you find oral communication will be inadequate, then you can go for written communication. Next one. Written communication need not include all matters that arose during the course of audit. When I say you have to communicate in a written format to those charged with governance, each and everything will you communicate? What breakfast you had, what lunch you had, when you are going to sleep, at what time you wake up. All this also you will communicate. Not required. Whatever has been mentioned in the standard, that if you communicate, that will be more than enough. Don't communicate everything, useless things. And the auditor shall communicate with those charged with governance on a timely basis. Clear? You have to communicate in a timely manner. It should not be like today you have completed, after 1 year you have after 1 year you are communicating with those charged with governance. Will that be appropriate? No. Try to do the communication as early as possible and all that too on a timely basis. Next, documentation. Nothing but whatever you are communicating with those charged with governance, all that should be included in your audit documentation also. The same thing they say, where matters required by SA 260 to be communicated are communicated orally. In case if you are communicating in a oral format, the auditor should include them in the audit documentation. Whatever you have orally communicated, write it down on a piece of paper and store it. And when and to whom they were communicated. Where matters have been communicated in writing, the auditor should retain a copy of communication. Nothing but if you are communicating in a letter format, one copy of the letter you will send it to those charged with governance, one copy of the letter you will store it in the audit documentation. However, if you have communicated orally, you have to put it down on a paper what you have communicated orally, then that you have to store in documentation. So if you do in written communication, one copy you will place it in the documentation. If you do oral communication, you will once again record it in writing and store it in your documentation. Whatever it is, everything needs to be stored. Understood, everybody? So this is what the SA 260 is all about. So what we have understood, guys, the standard is very small, but the concept is very bigger. Most of the time we have spent on understanding who are falling under those charged with governance only. So we understood who are falling under those charged with governance. Number two, we have understood what are the objectives of the auditor or You can also say responsibilities of the auditor as per SA 260. Then we have seen you have to determine who are the appropriate persons in the organization with whom you are required to communicate. Next, I have told regarding each and everything what specifically you have to communicate, like what things you have to communicate regarding auditors' responsibilities, what you have to communicate regarding planned scope and timing, what things you have to communicate regarding significant findings. That also we have seen. Then after that, in case of listed entities, you are required to communicate with those charged with governance regarding auditors' independence. And finally, how the communication process to be in listed entities compulsorily written. In case of unlisted entities, first option will be given orally. If inadequate, do there also in written format, and whatever you are communicating, all that needs to be documented. So this is what regarding SA 260. Hope you guys are able to understand. So this is what regarding SA 260, guys. See you in the next session with another standard. Thank you. Bye. Take care.